Well, as you are finishing your lunches, I'd love to take just a second here to give a big thank you to the staff from Calvary Church. Thank you so much. Lunch was wonderful, filling. I didn't get any of the soup. How was the soup? It smelled really good. Good soup? All right. Well, as Heather reminded us, the importance of sitting around the table and sharing a meal and what that can do as far as developing a relationship and deepening relationship with one another. That speaks to a philosophy that undergirds a lot of what we do at Water Street. It is about kind of gathering around those felt needs. We all need to eat. We all need food in our lives. We need shelter. We need sometimes support in other ways, those felt needs. But that's a starting point. Earlier, somebody talked about the difference between transactional and relational. And that's another thing that's really prominent in what we try to do at Water Street is try to be less transactional, more relational, because we know that it's in the power of relationships that lives are transformed. We'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon. But to that end, I want to share a little highlight for you of something that's been going on at Water Street. Just in the last few weeks, we opened up a new place. We've been doing food distribution for our neighbors for years through a food pantry down at the end of our block in an old CR's Market. Anybody remember CR's Market? It's kind of like, I don't know if that's the poor man's Turkey Hill or if that's the high end. It's one of those. But we used to have a CR's Market at the end of our block, and then we turned that into our food pantry. Recently, we were blessed to be able to acquire a building just a half block away from us, an old funeral home. And so we're taking a place from death to life as we walk with our neighbors. So I want to show you a little clip about our 12-in-1 center. Please excuse if there's an advertisement at the beginning of this.
As more Lancaster County families struggle with rising costs and food insecurity, Water Street Mission is expanding its outreach. As Fox 43's Natalie Caranda reports, the nonprofit has opened a new ministry hub specifically designed to serve neighbors with dignity.
For families struggling to put food on the table in Lancaster, a new door just opened for help.
We've been dreaming about this space for so long.
The 12-in-1 Center, located inside a historic renovated mansion on Prince Street, is designed as an easily accessible space for families facing food insecurity and poverty.
And it's a pantry that is free to our neighbors, where they can come once a week.
Upon arrival, neighbors check in, receive a buzzer, and wait their turn inside a warm cafe space instead of standing outside in the cold.
They don't need to worry about that stress of standing in line or waiting or losing their spot. They have the buzzer. It's to provide the dignity that they don't need to stand in line outside. They can come inside, they can come up here, have a cup of coffee for free, have a snack, and just be here and be present.
The focus is dignity, a word leaders here say is central to their faith-based mission.
Because so many of the people that are entering into our food pantry here often feel marginalized in our community. They don't feel they have a place, they don't feel like they always fit in. And so our goal is to provide a space where they feel welcome.
Water Street Mission was founded in 1905 and says the need continues to grow, with about 150 people walking through these doors each day they're open, and all of the food is donated.
We partner with mainly Central PA Food Bank, and we get donations from certain giants, certain Targets, Walmarts, a lot of our local farmers. They're blessing us too. They also see the need, and they not only do they see the need, but they trust us to get that need met. So that collaboration and partnership is a blessing.
The center is open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 1, offering not just groceries, but connections to healthcare, classes, and long-term support. Natalie Caranda, Fox 43 News.
All right. So we are so excited. And actually, I just was connecting with our Vice President of Community Resources, Jen Espenshade, who you saw in the video, about how are things going. We've been open just a handful of weeks. The end of, I guess it was mid-January that we opened to the neighborhood in the new space. And so again, we've been doing this for years. We've been serving 500, 600 families a week for years. Rick actually oversaw our outreach ministries for a little while. Steve's wife has been a part of our outreach ministries team for years. And we've always struggled with the way we did it. We loved the fact that we could come alongside our neighbors and provide help in their moment of need. But it didn't really align with what we had said about all of our other ministries, what our philosophy was, which is it's about relationship. That real transformation happens in that context. It happens through the power of God, through Jesus Christ, but through the relationships with people. And here we were inviting people through the doors, handing them food, and watching them leave. And it's really hard to build meaningful relationship in 15-second spurts. And so we are so excited about this space that it gives us the chance for our guests to come in the door rather than waiting out in this long line, get a buzzer, sit down in the commons, get a cup of coffee, a snack, hang out, build relationships with each other, for our staff to come alongside, build relationships with them, get to know them personally and understand their needs. And the results we're seeing are fantastic. So just since we've opened up, we're seeing about a 5% increase in the number of people coming through year over year. And so that's increasing, which we hoped it would. But even more importantly, she was able to tell me that we've had 32 of our guests who are coming for food who have now engaged with what we call internal services, where they're partnering with our other community resources, whether it's around pastoral and spiritual care, career and financial services, social work, that they're actually engaging and connecting into those additional services so we can walk with them. And that we have 3 classes ready to roll. There's a classroom space. I don't know if you could see in the video. There's a classroom space in that building as well. So we're going to be offering English as a second language classes. We're going to be offering career and financial service classes called Faith and Finance in partnership with the Chalmers Center. And then health and wellness classes as well. And so we've already done a couple health fairs in that building since we opened up to connect people with both community resources and the medical clinic at Water Street. So it's just been fantastic to see that change and evolution, taking one of our areas of ministry that's done good work and bringing it to another level. And so I'm super excited and grateful to my team for doing that. Let's give a shout out to the community resources team at Water Street. They had an amazing vision for that. And as we talk about that dynamic, that this kind of 2 lanes that we walk in when we come alongside people who are struggling in a variety of ways, we can respond in 2 different ways. We can respond in a programmatic way, or we can respond in a relational way. And true confessions, when we did our first Compelled by Love gathering, and through the first few years of Compelled by Love, it was my mission to get churches to stop having programmatic responses to the needs in your community. I wanted you to all shut down all your programs and start getting to know people. And that was my own biased, partially informed view. And what I've realized is that it's not one or the other. And yes, we do tend to lean one direction or another, partly because of how we're wired, partly because of where we are, partly because of what resources we have available to us. But I believe it is a both and, right? There is need for programs. There's need for places, as Adam said, like I'd still love if the churches would love their neighbors so well that the factory didn't have to exist and that Water Street didn't have to exist. I would love that. Also, realistically, we know that there's probably a dynamic where we together demonstrate the love of Christ to our community in such a way that it is transforming lives. And there's room for both programs at nonprofits, but even in your churches too. But I think we all still have a lot of room to grow and learn around what it means to truly walk in relationship with one another, to be the body of Christ. to invite people in and be welcoming and create space for those kinds of relationships. So this next section, I'm going to invite up our two panelists for this next conversation. And these are two gentlemen who have helped me truly understand what ministry needs to look like. They've been great examples to me, and they've done fantastic work in a variety of environments, which is one of the reasons I'm super excited to have them up here today, because they can speak to it from multiple lenses. So Steve Brubaker in the green shirt. Steve, thank you for being here. He is with Grace Community Church in Willow Street, the counseling pastor, overseeing their counseling programs. But Steve has a long history in church ministry and rescue mission ministry and just loving people. And so I'm really excited for the insights that Steve will have for us today. And Rick, who I've thrown his name out a couple times in teasing ways. Rick Rudder is my pastor at Crossroads Mennonite Church in the city. But Rick as well has a long history of church ministry, of rescue mission ministry, serving at Water Street, serving as the program director at the Keystone Rescue Mission Alliance in northern Pennsylvania, and as the executive director of a mission up in New Hampshire. And then coming back to pastor a little church in the city of Lancaster. And both of these gentlemen, I think, through their years of and Steve's worked at, how many missions have you worked at? 3, 4?
I got booted out of maybe 3.
3.
Philly, Jax, and York, and then Lancaster, of course.
So
yeah.
4.
Only booted out of 3. Right.
That's good. So I want to invite, the theme for this session is kind of programs versus relationships, or can it be both, or should it be both, and how do we balance those? And so I want to start it off with a couple questions for these gentlemen before we talk around the table. So both of you have led and even developed programs designed to help people, individuals struggling with poverty. Can you share how your experience in those roles of kind of leading programmatic responses formed your views on programs, resources, and relationship, and the role that programs versus relationships play in coming alongside people?
Well, this is a profound statement. We need both programs and relationships. But I think it's incumbent on all of us to, when we think about cultivating relationships with those in different socioeconomic classes and with the poor and others, I think we don't think enough about how we need to think. And I think that's very important. First of all, how do you define poverty? Is poverty simply a lack of something? Or is it lack of access to power? If I wanted to meet the mayor of Lancaster, the new mayor, Mayor Arroyo, I don't know him directly yet, but I could call Jack and he could introduce me to him, because I have access. But even deeper than that is this whole idea of relationship, which I think is fundamental before program. We follow a God of relationship. If you look at Genesis 1, let us make man in our image, looking at the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There's perfect relationship, collaborating to bring about creation. And we as believers are tied into the body of Christ. So by position, we're already in relationship. And yet our relationship prior to that is broken. Our relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with God's kingdom is broken, according to Genesis 3. So we are all in need of restoration in order to have a relationship with God. And the question I had to answer before I got involved with, especially with Water Street, working with homeless addicts, I never used a drug. How could I connect with impoverished homeless addicts? And I think what God showed me was I had to go to Genesis 3 and say, hey, I'm broken too. I'm just broken in a different way. And I think also as a conservative church person, I think we have to admit that many of us are privileged, and it's hard for us to understand the disenfranchised, those that don't have the access that we do. So we needed to find some common ground in order to connect. I don't understand addiction. I don't understand abject poverty, but I do understand broken relationship. So God wants to restore all of us. So it doesn't negate the idea that I have a lot of privilege, which I do, but it gave some common ground, allowing me, at least mentally and practically, to come alongside someone who's broken in a different way. Mother Teresa said, the deepest poverty is a poverty of relationship. You know, finances is what we talk about all the time, but we're all impoverished. And I think we have to think and understand that first before we come alongside in a meaningful way and a practical way.
So Steve is the deep thinker of the two of us. And
Can I say one thing about that? Yeah. Jack invited us not because we're deep thinkers, but we had to balance the age out a little bit. With Vanessa and Adam and Lily, okay? So that's why we're here.
So he's the deep thinker, and I'm the more practical one, and everything he thinks, then I just go and do. He's exactly 1 year older than me, so I honor my older brother.
You're going to make me cry, Rick.
But it won't be the first time. The reality is these two guys are the reason why I'm here. And we talk about relationship, right? These two guys are the reason I'm here. Because in '93, I went to Water Street and I was a guest. Steve was on staff. Jack was just starting out at the youth center and living in the men's shelter when he first got there, before he bought a house. Then Jack bought a house. And he had an extra room, and he let this guy that was coming out of the rescue mission and moving into community move in with him and his buddy. And then for the next 3 years, wondered why he made that decision.
Every day. I wondered every day.
But the reality is that that's the practical part of a relationship, because I would not be who I am and I would not be where I am without having relationships of people coming alongside of me to teach me things that I didn't even understand or didn't even know I needed to know. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges for people that come across our path is sometimes they just don't know what they need to know, because they've never heard it, never seen it, or experienced it. And so for me, when I look at relationships, it was Steve who challenged me, because I used to walk into Steve's office, and I don't know if it's still the same, but Steve used to have these piles of books all around the floor and on his desk. I could never figure out how he didn't use a bookshelf, I could never figure out somebody could read so many books all at one time. But Steve,
I never read them. I just liked having them around. They served as insulation. You know.
But one of the books that Steve pointed me to, or one of the places Steve pointed me to, was the Chalmers Institute. And when he did, I read a book by Brent Myers called Walking with the Poor. And in that book by Brent Myers, it's been one of my ministry philosophies comes right out of that, and it was how you look at poverty, how you look at people who are in poverty, defines how you respond. And so the question I have to ask for all of us to consider is why. You know, Simon Sinek said, start with why. What's the why? Why do you do what you do? And for us who are pastors, that's real easy, because we want to advance the kingdom of God. We want to see people transformed in their relationships with Jesus, right? Because we know that inward transformation is what's going to lead people, ultimately is going to benefit people the most. But you know, from my perspective, sometimes that why isn't enough, because we can lead people to Jesus and still not help them out of their circumstance. And so why? Why are you here at Compelled? Why do you want to help your neighbor? Because Jesus said so, because he said, hey, I look at Matthew 27 and I want to be a sheep and not a goat. And those are good reasons, but why? What is it about that person that's knocking on your door that compels you to want to help? Why?
I think the other question you have to answer too is, how do I cultivate trust with someone who's in a markedly different place than I am? And there was a missiologist, Marvin Mayers. He asked this question. He called it the prior question of trust, the PQT. When you go into a foreign country, you're asking yourself, what are the what's unique about this culture? Can I get to know the language? What are the hidden things that could offend? I need to understand something about the culture that I'm in. The prior question of trust could be applied to us also as we try to cultivate relationships with those who might be a lot different than us, as we try to come alongside them. Here's the prior question, though. Is what I am doing, saying, or thinking, is it enhancing the possibility of cultivating trust, or is it detracting from such? So I think sometimes we dive into things without thinking through some of the whys and the thought behind the practice is incredibly important, because we want to be effective in the long run. And it's not easily done, cultivating trust with someone who's quite a bit different than we are. The other fascinating thing about the Gospel Rescue Mission, I know we have a lot of different representation here that is not related to the rescue mission. The Gospel Rescue Mission's philosophy was you meet physical needs first with hope that you could build trust to get to the deepest need. So the felt need, moving from the felt need to the deepest need. And that's kind of like when Jesus spoke to the woman at the well. I find it fascinating that he showed himself to be human also, because he said, as you remember, he said, I am thirsty. First of all, he shouldn't have been talking to this woman anyways, but he put himself in her path. I've gotten to the point in my life, and I don't know if you're like this in your life, I can avoid the Jericho road. I don't have to come alongside poverty. I'm slick enough to know to avoid that guy in the street that's going to ask me for cash, right? So I think as believers, though, we have to be intentional about putting ourselves in the path of those that are in need, and then coming alongside in some kind of an astute way where we're really trying to understand where they're coming from and knowing that we don't have all the answers, that kind of thing. So.
Is that why you stopped going to Applebee's, too? You didn't want to run into people who are...
I've been to Applebee's a few times.
Again, I think the two of you come at this from a unique angle because of the way you've both served in church ministry. Grace EC in the city, Grace in Willow Street, Crossroads, and you were in some leadership roles in the churches when you were in Northeast PA and New Hampshire as well, Rick. And now serving as a pastor. What are some of the unique challenges or barriers or maybe even advantages that churches have in developing meaningful programs that come alongside those who are struggling? So you look at it through both lenses. What are some of the unique challenges? It's one thing for a nonprofit with a full city block in the middle of Lancaster City and paid staff to develop programs that are hopefully going to be somewhat effective. But what are some of the unique challenges or angles at churches, and then what are some of the advantages?
So I'm going to say first, the biggest challenge for all of us, regardless of your size, is volunteers, right? We can't get enough people to volunteer for children's ministry on Sunday. How are we going to get people to volunteer for 5 or 6 or 7 other things during the course of the week? So for me, as a smaller church pastor, that's probably the biggest challenge, but it also becomes my advantage, right? So I had 16 organizations in my boxes, when we were doing the card of shame, right? It wasn't a card of shame for me. It's a card of pride. Because I know these organizations. I know who's doing what. Some of it's because I was at Water Street for so long and all of that. But I know who's doing what, and I know where to plug people in. So what that does is that enables me, the advantage that it gives me is to be able to walk alongside somebody and not say, hey, go to Water Street. But for me to reach out to somebody at an organization and say, hey, I've got this person. Is this the right resource? And I've called Lily, I've called Jack and say, hey, Jack, I know Water Street's not the right resource. Where can I direct this person? Find the resource and take them there instead of just sending them there. And that builds relationships. So from a relational standpoint, from a program standpoint, we've looked at it and we approach it a a little bit differently in that we're not looking to invent programs. We're looking to invest in people. Now, we might do some programmatic things, like we have an initiative at our church called Love 717, right? And Love 717 is where every month we do something different to connect with people in our community. It's our youth group was over at the Towers for a bingo night a couple weeks ago, and then once a year we do a big, one big blowout thing where we hit a bunch of different organizations. But every month we're looking at ways in which we can connect with people relationally in our community, and so that gives us the advantage it gives us is it narrows our focus into one night, one event, to develop relationship. And it's not just this one thing. Well, we're only going to the Towers once a year. No, we're going back a couple times during the year, right? We're going to go back and we're going to do a Christmas carol singing, and we're going to do bingo during the day, and we're going to go back and do a couple different things at the Towers throughout the course of the year. But we're going to be intentional in developing relationships with our neighbors instead of creating programs, because the programs for us already exist. So how can we help them find them?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that, because I'm going to brag on Rick and our church and some of the vision they have. So one of the things where we piggybacked with others and connected was hosting a warming center at our church. And in the cold months, and there are gaps where there aren't day shelters available for those who are unhoused. Water Street has day shelter all the time for our shelter guests, but there are others, and there's, Anchor does amazing work. Patty's here, but weekends. And so our church, would occasionally host a warming center there. To me, where it hit wow, this is where it's connecting. It's not just we're doing this one-off activity and creating a space. Was the Sunday that we weren't running a warming center, and we actually just a whole bunch of idiot Eagle fans said, "Hey, let's do a tailgate party in our fellowship hall and watch the Eagles game together and just have a good time." And so we did. Everybody brought food, and we had our potluck, and we're eating together, watching the Eagles game. And some of our neighbors came walking in saying, "Hey, are you guys doing a warming center?" And we're like, "No, we're watching the Eagles game. Come on in." And nobody flinched for a second. And nobody wondered, who are these people who aren't here on Sunday mornings for worship, hanging out for this Eagles game? And they're like, "Are we allowed to have food too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, oh my gosh." and just the way, I work at Water Street, right? So, but to watch my friends in the congregation just embracing and walking relationally with people they hadn't met before, but who felt comfortable because we had done something. We'd created a sense of safety for them, that when the door was open, they're like, "Oh, I guess I can walk in." As opposed to "What's that building? Why is that church door open?" They could have walked right by a million times. But it was a beautiful moment for me.
I like how that just evolved naturally, too, out of organically almost. I think one of the other challenges we have in churches, too, is sometimes we have a bit of a God complex. I had the privilege of spending 3 months in Kenya, and I remember, first month I'm going to get Kenya saved. Second month I'm going to take care of that slum outside of Nairobi of 800,000. And then I'll just hang out in Mombasa for the last month. I mean, work on my tan. Total arrogance, though, and naivete and unrealism, and just condescension, and how foolish that is. So I think sometimes, we are well-resourced typically, right, as churches. Sometimes we can sit there and not realize how we expect it. We're comfortable with it, We don't realize how good we have it sometimes. So I think we have to get past that, also. The other thing, too, I think a lot of times in our churches, the leadership really has to be astute to wanting to open up, can I say, to the marginalized, to be open to those kind of things. Sometimes you can tell a lot about where a church is by looking at their budget. How much of the budget is consumed by internal programming. And that's not that it's bad, but what percentage is being intentionally put on programming that actually meets needs of outside of the church. And that's a hard shift to make too. But then also being comfortable with things that, we started a ministry at our church visiting Lancaster County Prison because there was someone in the pew that had an interest in doing that. And all of a sudden now we have a team that's rallied around that, and they go to the prison every week. So allowing organic stuff to arise too. I will say this, as an old head, I've also found advantage in strategic planning, I guess, or actually sitting down and figuring out what makes your congregation unique. And like if you get down Prince Street right now, you're going to see 5 core values on those little pennants along Prince Street. And one of them is authenticity and relationship. That's one of the Water Street's core values. They took that so seriously that they went around to the entire organization one year. Jack, I forget what year that was. And we asked everybody, hey, how are you living out this core value? Finances, administration, leadership, children's ministry, youth ministry, residential ministry. And we actually got to the point where we tried to educate our team about what that looks like. We need a particular kind of staff person who's willing to take their mask off and not bleed on residents at Water Street, but at least give someone else the idea that, hey, I haven't quite arrived yet this side of heaven. I'm almost there, but I still have a few foibles that I have to take care of. But we let 3 chaplains go. That's how seriously we took our mission, vision, and values statement. We want to live by this. We don't want it just to be a plaque on the wall. And what that did, we started hiring people according to our mission, vision, and values statement. And we had people who could cultivate that safe place that Jack's talking about. We needed to know, why is this guy homeless? Why is he impoverished? But what's really going on? What's the deeper issue? This needs to be a safe place where we can talk about those kind of things, because you're not going to know. The truth won't set you free if you're not talking about the truth.
Yeah, the one other thing I just to piggyback a little bit is that one of the things that I think we have to be cognizant of in the search for how we live out the why is, for all of us, we have a desire to see God glorified and see the kingdom advanced, right, as followers of Jesus. But, God's already there. Sometimes we think it's our omni-strategy is more important than God's omniscience and omnipresence. We forget that he's there before we get there.
Yeah.
Right? And so we don't look to see where he's already at and what he's already doing. And then we come in with our ideas and our plans and our strategies. And that's why I think it's being a smaller church for me is so much more strategic, because I can't afford not to look to see where he's already at and what he's already doing, so that I can come alongside of it and follow where he's leading instead of where Rick thinks it's the best place to go.
The other thing I think with programming too, once programming develops, I think it always behooves us to continue to evaluate, hey, is this program doing what it was originally designed to do? Sometimes programs become obsolete or ineffective because we are veering off our original task. So I think evaluation before the Lord too is helpful. The other thing about churches too, we're nice people. We like being nice because we're nice people. And sometimes dealing with some of the issues that we're talking about here today, we have to appear to be not nice, meaning John 1:14 says Jesus was full of grace and truth. And I haven't met a lot of people, nor am I there, I haven't met a lot of people who perfectly balance those aspects of the gospel, grace and truth, like Jesus did. Either we're grace people, we love talking about the love of God and how cool God is and how much he loves us and all that kind of thing. But we have a hard time talking about truth and justice. But then we have other people who won't let you leave the room until they beat you over the head with the Bible, right? To make sure they get the truth in before you go. We need both pieces, though. If Rick cares for me, he's a brother in the Lord. If he sees me going off the beam and coming up with some kind of an attitude and I'm isolating and all that kind of stuff, he cares about me enough that he's going to come up alongside me and risk our friendship because we already have trust developed. And he's going to say, Steve, what's going on? I notice your heart has kind of gotten cold lately, and your attitude is you're clipped with people. You're not taking time with folks. Can I pray for you? What's going on? That's the kind of thing we need relationally. And that's not necessarily a program, but it's an attitude that we carry.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great insights. We're gonna shift the conversation. I want one comment as I think about it was kind of ringing as Steve was speaking, and then again as Rick was speaking. So I feel like I should say it out loud. How we've done this at Water Street. So this balance of obviously Water Street, we're a large organization. We're dealing with large numbers of people in need. A couple hundred people living with us every night, several hundred coming to us every day. Looking for assistance with food or medical care or dental care, and then hundreds of teens and young children, coming to us for some of their core needs as well. There's a lot of programming that needs to be designed and executed well. We changed this kind of evolution. We've been around for 120 years, and we have the same purpose statement that we had 108 years ago when we registered with the state. It's to advance the kingdom of God to advance the kingdom of God through the gospel of Jesus Christ by doing missionary relief and rescue work of all kinds. We've developed core values, and Steve talked about authenticity and relationship, but in the last several years as we launched a new strategic plan, we rewrote our mission statement to remind us as we move forward, and this is going to be a test for me because I haven't memorized this one as well as the other. But it's in response to Christ's love, we follow his mission to walk alongside our neighbors experiencing marginalization and poverty, trusting that he will transform lives and restore hope. There's a couple elements in there that are really, really critical to me in us living out this balance of programs versus relationships. First of all, it's his mission, not ours. It's his vision, and it's this walking alongside people on that journey, knowing that he's the one who's going to do it. We're going to create the best programs we can, but I've said this to my staff lots of times, even the ones who have come up with the best vision and ideas, we can have the best program in the world, and that is not going to change a life. It's the Holy Spirit, and it's the relationships that people are surrounded by. When our guests are asked, and Rick would, if he was telling you more of his journey, and maybe he will later, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but he'll talk about the relationships, not the program that he went through at Water Street. Was the program important? Absolutely. Did the program change Rick's life? No. Jesus did, and he did it through the people that he surrounded him with. We've heard that from our guests who have struggled, that they've gone out, they've seen life transformation, they've gone out into the community, tried to do it on their own, and they struggled, and they've come back, and we're like, what's going on? And it's relationships. I'm alone out there. I need those people around me, and I don't know how to do that. And so we've changed our programming to help hopefully bolster that with them. But there's this balance of incredible programs. But when we were first trying to think about next steps for our residential program, we were reshaping it. I remember sitting down with a group of guys in our enrichment center and inviting them to say, what do we have to save? If we're redoing the program, what elements of this program are most important to you? Is it this class? Is it that class? Is it this group meeting? Is it what parts of the program are most important to you? And we got a couple dozen answers of all these different things. But on everybody's paper was the relationships. You change the program. Am I still going to be able to meet with a life coach? Am I still going to be able to meet with a chaplain, is what we called him back then, or a counselor? Am I going to have relationship? That's what they cared about. Change the program. Keep the people. And so that, to me, that's something that's been embedded in me as we look at Water Street, as we try to shape things the right way moving forward. And I want to invite you to have some conversation around these questions as we think about programs versus relationship. Where are we starting from here? So would you consider your church's strength to be oriented more towards running quality programs or developing quality relationships? Who are you? We've got to, like, where are we starting from? Man, we have an amazing array of programs. We've got everything from 3-year-olds through 300-year-olds. We're doing stuff for everybody, right? We've got great programs. We actually can't get volunteers to come out for anything, but man, our people love each other and know each other and walk with each other. So who are you? Name who you are, share that with people at the table. Think about your current response to poverty. And hopefully it's not ignoring it. But what's your church's current response to poverty? Do you lean more towards programmatic or more towards relational? And there's no judgment on this because I believe both are really important, but knowing where we're starting from as a church, as a community. Are there constraining factors that would lead your church in one direction over the other? Or are there specific assets that you have? They're like, yeah, we do this because, man, we have this resource, we have these assets, and we want to lean into those. What is it that kind of defines? What are the constraining factors or specific assets that lead you to be programmatic or relational? And then share specific examples of quality programs or quality relationship development that are currently happening. Let's learn from each other. So the timer on the back says 12. I'm going to go to 18 minutes for sharing. And then we'll come back and we'll take a deeper dive on the relationship side and then a deeper dive on the program side in our last 2 sessions. So let's start with these questions. Let's make sure everybody around the table has a chance to share. Facilitators, if you can help with that. If somebody's being a little quiet, they didn't speak at all this morning, let's invite them to go first this afternoon. And let's try to keep things flowing so everybody can share and learn from each other. Thank you. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. People are getting more comfortable with each other. The conversations are getting more energetic because you're not coming back on my 10 count anymore. I'm going to have to call Irvin Scott and find out what's the trick when the 10, 9, 8 doesn't work anymore. What do I have to do next? Yeah, that's true. It's all about relationship, right? Jack's trying to stick to the program. You guys are being relational, and it's throwing me off. We're going to take a short break in a minute, but I do want to allow just a little space here for any callbacks, anything that came out of your conversation at the table, something you're like, wow, like that's kind of amazing that church is doing that, balancing these things, or have identified really, hey, this is how God wired us, and we're living into it. What did you hear around your tables around this issue of programs versus relationships versus trying to balance the two? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely organizational life cycle thing to this, right? And you've got things that have been embedded in the DNA of your church for such a long time, and it's hard to change that. And maybe you don't have to necessarily. Like, I'm not saying you have to be more like the church plant, but what does it look like to live into who you are, the life cycle of your church? Any other thoughts? Pressure on a facilitator in the front row.
Yeah, a couple good thoughts. One was shared about programs are a way to manage relationships. Because ideally, it would be great to pour into individuals, but we only have so much energy for that. And so, but the need is so great. So I thought that was kind of an insightful way. But how do we the balance of that?
Yeah.
Making sure that it doesn't become programming and miss out on a relationship. But we do need programming because we can't do all relational.
Absolutely. Some people are wired to do it, but not many, right?
Well, no, we did talk
Yeah.
about that too. Personality.
Yeah.
Introvert, extrovert.
How many of you are introverted and you're just totally like freaked out by this whole conversation? Heather, you're introverted and you're leading a church that's like all about relationship. Wow. We will all be praying for Heather. It's remarkable how many senior pastors are introverts at their core, but you've learned to take on a role and in spaces to be extremely extroverted, but then you need that place to recharge. You need that alone time. That's a reality. As we're thinking about how do we do ministry in our church, we've got to be real, and sensitive to who we are as well. We can't just do it because, that's the formula that works, right? Be open to how God has created you and his unique calling and assignment for you in this season. So we're gonna pause and take a 5-minute break. Since we just had a lunch break that was a little bit longer, just a 5-minute break. So if you need to run to the restroom, refresh your drinks or your coffee, and then we'll come back and we're going to go a little deeper on relationship again. So introverts, stay out. If you need to, take a walk, get some fresh air. Wait, some of our presenters are introverts. You got to stay. So 5 minutes and we'll be back, and then we'll close with more time around some program and some creative ideas, hopefully.